Hi, I'm Charlie from cookingsecretsformen.com. Well, it's a beautiful day here in Milwaukee. I have the windows open. I live downtown, so we may hear a little bit of city life. So please bear with us, but it's living in the city. Monday, September 26th is U.S. National Family Day. And before you write in the comments about having the wrong date, there are surprisingly several national family holidays. We are celebrating U.S. National Family Day with a collab, hashtag National Family Day. It features our favorite family recipe. Never too late to join this collab. You can even go back to a previously produced YouTube video and just edit it and add the hashtag National Family Day. So my family recipe is the DeSando Family Recipe for Spaghetti and Meatballs. This is our family recipe that has been handed down for multiple generations. My grandfather Frank, who emigrated from Calabria, taught my dad, who taught me, and I've subsequently taught my two sons, Luke and Carlo, how to make this rich red sauce and very tasty meatballs. We usually make this recipe with fresh pasta, but for the sake of time, we'll just use some fresh pasta from Glorioso's market here in Milwaukee. Both of these recipes for the red sauce and the meatballs appear in volume 4 of our e-Cookbook series named Pasta, which I wrote in both English and Italian. You can download for free at our recipe website, cookingsecretsformen.com. Also included in the e-cookbook is The Legend of the DeSando Family Meatballs, which I always found amusing. It's a childhood memory that has stuck with me into adulthood. I was very young, probably 5 or 6, when I first remembered smelling the sauce and the meatballs cooking in the sauce overnight. And that's how Italians cook. The sauce would simmer overnight with the meatballs cooking in the sauce, becoming very succulent and tender. It was our family's holiday tradition on Christmas, except for Thanksgiving. But most holidays we had spaghetti and meatballs. And like Virgil Sollozzo said to Captain McCluskey in The Godfather, I'm going to speak Italian now to Michael. And you guys are Michael right now. Grazie mille per aver guardato questo video. Spero vi piaccia la mia ricetta di famiglia per salsa rosa El popolette, miei buoni amici, e che Dio benedica Alton Brown. So the first thing we do is we make the meatballs. Meatballs, I go back to my grandfather and my dad. They used to cook the meatballs in the red sauce and it simmered all night. I used to do it that way, but I found that baking them in the oven and finishing them in the sauce produces a more flavorful sauce and about 90% less grease. So I've got the oven heated to 375 and we're going to make the meatballs. Now, these meatballs can be expensive to make, but you can trim the budget by cutting out the ground veal, or you can use store-bought Parmesan, but as my mother used to say, anything worth doing is worth overdoing. So buy the veal and use the Parmigiano Reggiano as your Parmesan. So we have 4 kinds of meat. I use Italian sausage, ground beef, ground pork, and ground veal. So we're going to mix all those together in a bowl. So here's our sausage, we're going to put that in. Our ground veal, our ground beef, and ground pork. That goes in. All right, so in the mixture goes the following. 3 eggs. I'm gonna crack them. All right, so 3 eggs. And we've got about 4 or 5 cloves minced garlic. I'm using the jarred. I'm gonna put in about 1, 2, 3, 4. So all be mixed in. And I have 1 large onion chopped. That's gonna go in. And a couple tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. This is Parmesan, Reggiano Parmesan. About 1 cup, that's going in. Same with Italian breadcrumbs. I know some people use dried bread, stale bread. I don't like that. It's like making crab cakes with bread. If you're from the East Coast, you don't make crab cakes with bread in them, and if you're making meatballs, you don't put stale bread in. All right, then is our spices. It's a combination, whatever you like. I use Italian seasonings. Use a little crushed red pepper, a teaspoon of each or so. This is oregano. This is basil, dried rosemary, some thyme, All the Italian seasonings going in. There's also Italian seasonings in the Italian breadcrumbs, and salt and pepper. This is SPG from Garlaholics. SPG, salt, pepper, garlic. I'm going to clean this up a little bit, put on my gloves, and then we're going to knead the meat. All right, this really doesn't need a lot of explanation. I'm just going to knead everything. You want to get your hands into it. You're going to try to combine everything. Eggs, the oil, garlic, all the spices, and the breadcrumbs. And you want to keep kneading. You want all 4 meats to be combined. Squeeze through your fingers. Not rocket science. So I've got the meatballs all combined. We're going to form the meatballs now. I've taken a sheet pan and lined it with parchment paper. No real rocket science to this. I like meatballs that are fair size, golf ball or maybe a little bit bigger. At that size. They'll shrink a little bit, obviously, in the cooking. All right, so we finished the meatballs. You see I got 1 and probably 3/4 and another one, but this is 4 pounds of meat. Obviously, if you cut it down, cut the meatballs, make them smaller, there's a lot of different ways to do it. My meatballs are fairly large, but that's how I like them. And this is my family recipe, so this is the way we do it. So these are gonna go in the oven at 375 for 30 minutes. While these are in the oven, we're gonna make the sauce. All right, we're gonna move on to making the red sauce. And here's our ingredients. Onion, garlic, tomatoes, spices, some red wine. And we have our secret ingredient back here, which we will get to. So I'm gonna put the camera up above. All right, let's see if this works. Hopefully the camera won't fall into the sauce. So we have 1 onion chopped. We'll stir this, get some sweat going on. Start adding our herbs. This is salt, garlic, pepper from Garlaholics. We'll be adding garlic later, but we don't want to burn. We'll use the same spices that we used for the meatballs, fresh thyme. And this is the same, we're just kind of measuring in our head. The oregano, always crushed red pepper. We've got some rosemary, and then some basil, dried basil. You can always add spices later. Get a little sweat going. We're at about medium heat here. We want the onions to cook down a little bit. In just a minute, we'll put in the garlic. All right, it's been simmering for a little bit. We'll add some minced garlic. Unfortunately, I don't have real garlic. 1, 2. Garlic will burn, so I want to incorporate this with the onions and the herbs. All right, the next thing we'll add is our tomatoes. Like I said, that's the trash collection across the street. Crushed tomatoes. I'm gonna put this in. Save the can. We're gonna use that. And then we've got whole peeled tomatoes. We're gonna pour the juices in. Kind of just by hand squeeze the tomatoes. Give us a little stir. We're going to simmer this probably for a couple of hours. All right, so we've got our red wine, and as most cooks will tell you, you should cook with what you'd eat with. So one of the tricks that I use is you take your can of tomatoes that you just used and you pour in the wine into the can, slurp it around, and you'll get all the little pieces out of the can. And we'll do the same thing with the other can too. So if your sauce gets a little thin, use some tomato paste. If it's a little thick, add a little bit of water. A couple more ingredients. One is a bay leaf, and the thing about the bay leaf is don't forget it's in there. And usually put in a little bit of sugar, offset the acidity of the tomatoes. Sugar, maybe a couple teaspoons. Remember, you can always put more sugar in. Can't take it out. All right, so Our meatballs are just about done. So one of the secret ingredients that my family uses for the red sauce is we put in whole pork chops, bone-in pork chops. There's 2. And chicken thighs. There's 2 parts to this. First, they impart flavor. There's a lot of flavor in both the chicken and the pork chops, but also they'll cook in the sauce, and after about a half an hour, they'll be done. You take them out and you eat them for lunch while the sauce continues to cook. So that's one of our DeSando Family Recipe tricks. All right, as you can see, meatballs are out of the oven. They look great. I took them off the 2 pans they were on because they were full of grease. So that grease will not be going into the pan. The meatballs will. So I'm just going to drop them in. All right. So get all the meatballs covered. Okay. So right now we're going to cover it and let it simmer for about 2 hours. And we'll come back. We'll have our spaghetti and meatball family recipe ready for you. Okay, so our sauce is been cooking for about 2.5 hours. It was a little bit thin, so I did add some tomato paste. Some of the things I want to show you. This is the grease that I've skimmed off the top, and this is with cooking the meatballs in the oven and not having any of that grease there. So you got to make sure that you skim off. So all you need is a ladle, and then you just keep skimming and get as much grease as you can. Now this is the chicken and the pork chops that cooked in the sauce, and I've already had one of the pork chops, and I will have the chicken for lunch tomorrow. So that's a little trick that my dad used to do, is he'd cook a big pot with pork chops and chicken in it, and then feed it to us as we're waiting for dinner, having to smell this delicious red sauce cooking all day long. So the recipe that we did, it's made to cook longer than 2 hours. So you can cook as long as you like. We have a plate of linguine from Gloriosa's here in Milwaukee. Fresh pasta, I just cooked that. I'm going to get some sauce. Okay. I'm gonna grab a couple meatballs. Oh, they look great. As Emerald used to say, I wish we had smell-o-vision. All right, and the last thing we're gonna do is we're gonna grate a little Parmesan Reggiano on top, and top a little fresh basil, a little chiffonade basil, and here you have the DeSando Family Recipe for spaghetti and meatballs, red sauce, meatballs, fresh pasta. It is our family meal. Please join us on our hashtag National Family Day. Add one of your own family recipes. If you've had one in the past that you've made a video of, just add the hashtag and put it on in. So I hope you enjoyed this. I've enjoyed making it. I'm going to enjoy eating it. And as always, thanks for watching. And Alton, thank you for watching. Spero vi piace. Spero vi piaccia. Spero vi piaccia la mia ricetta di famiglia. You can use store-bought Parmesan, but as my mother used to say, and the breadcrumbs and the, oops, looky there. That is not good. That could have been a kitchen calamity, but